Okay, so here we are on Sunday, January 20th. I believe it's the same day for all of us, but for some of us it's evening, some of us it's morning. And this is just a humble little planning meeting, planning 5 workshops, which will occur on February 7, 8, and 9, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, at Loyola College here in Chennai. That's what, about 3 weeks from now? Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks from now. So I have the notes for the 5 workshops. It's 5 workshops, but one of them will be repeated. The introductory workshop, it'll happen on one day for college students and one day for adults. So that's one, and then there are 4 other workshops. And we are lucky that the coordinators of 3 of the workshops are here. I am the coordinator of one, which is the one for storytelling for coaching and counseling. And Banu, would you raise your hand? Yes. Banu was the coordinator for the Introduction to Storytelling workshop. And Ambuja, Ambuja and Basugi are the coordinators for using storytelling to teach any language. And, oh, Ramya, hello. Can you hear me? Please say a couple words so we can make sure we can hear you.
Yes, hi Eric.
Yes, great. Ramya has just sent 3 wonderful emails regarding 3 different workshops, but I haven't sent them onto the group yet because I just felt it would be too overwhelming right before this meeting. I'll pass them on immediately afterwards. The 5 email groups are moderated by me, so it comes in and then I have to approve it. I do that because many people, are saying thanks and hello, like they're sending private messages to me, but by accident they're sending it to the group. So by moderating it, I prevent those social emails from going through. But anyway, Ramya, thank you very much. Those were very interesting and beautiful messages you sent. Lavanya Srinivas, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Eric.
Great.
Good evening.
Good evening, and we can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, let's launch into the workshops. And one of the features of Zoom is that we can share our desktop. I think myself as the initiator of the call, and also I pay, you can Zoom for free one-on-one, it seems, unlimited time. But if you want to talk to more than one person, and if you want to talk for more than half an hour, you have to pay them like $20 a month, something like that. So I'm paying them that. And so either one of us or all of us can share his or her desktop. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm clicking share. I'm clicking that. And I'm going to open up. Banu, I hope it's okay that I'm opening up the notes for your workshop. Is it okay? Good. Okay, and I'm making it bigger. Can people see that pretty clearly?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, Eric.
Okay, so, perhaps even with permission from the, I know I'm putting people on the spot, with permission from the coordinators, we can even send these out. Because already the initial notes are on web pages. The initial notes were made by me, but now what we have is an outline of each workshop, which is a combination of different things. So in this introductory workshop, the participants will be invited to tell 4 different stories. It's a lot. One is a warm-up activity, which is just turn to your partner and tell her or him about something interesting that happened in the last 24 hours. And I have to credit the person who taught me this workshop. A man named Medicine Story, a Native American man, how many years ago? 30 or 35 years ago, at a rainbow gathering, I think in Vermont. If you don't know what a rainbow gathering is and you're interested, ask me later. It's a gathering where thousands of people gather in the woods and teach each other, do workshops for each other. Anyway, I remember when he said, turn to someone next to you and tell them about something you did in the last 24 hours. And, I thought, oh, this is too simple. It's not even storytelling. We're getting a little interference. So actually, I guess while I'm talking, why don't everyone put yourself on mute? I hate to do that, but one person is getting interference, so everyone should go on mute. Yes. Is everyone on mute? We're still getting some. Okay, now I think everyone's on mute. Okay, I'll try to keep my talking to a minimum, and Banu, you'll say a few words in a minute. But anyway, one activity is going to be tell your partner something happened in 24 hours. A big limitation we have in the hall that we're in is that almost all the seats are nailed down. So when we're in that room, people cannot gather in circles. They can only talk to the person next to them. So then a second activity is, either Banu or I are going to tell a very tiny story, which will invite people to tell to each other in pairs, just for the sake of practicing eye contact and some performance aspects that we want them to focus on. So that will be story number 2. Then we're going to invite them to select a Panchatantra story or an Aesop's Fable and tell it to a partner. And then finally, we're going to talk them through a process where they're going to create a little story. Is somebody is not on mute? Somebody who has like a TV in the background?
Eric, I suggest you to do that, please.
Huh?
Why don't you mute others when you talk, please?
Can I mute
Yes.
everybody all at once?
Yes.
How do I do that? Let's see. I can mute myself, but I don't know how to mute everybody. No, everyone. Like Renu, can you mute yourself? And Lavanya, could you mute yourself? And actually, when it's on screen share, I can't see anybody else's picture. I can only see the 4 of you. Okay, so now it's good. Okay, so those 4 stories will be there. And then we're planning for each of the workshops to for about half an hour, half of the workshop, have people go out in small groups. And so we're thinking, if there's 100 people in the audience or 100 participants, we need 10 trainers to lead small groups, because the coordinator of the workshop would be 1, and then she needs 9 others. So Banu, you've already begun gathering people?
Yes, Eric, I have already begun, and people are showing interest. The trainers are getting ready. I'm just going to share. I have shared this file to a couple of them, and more are going to receive. And we're going to start tomorrow.
And you have to gather people for 2 different sessions, right?
Of course, yeah.
So you have to gather 18 people, because some of them won't be able to come on both days.
Yes,
So
yes.
The thing is that I was talking about this with someone, and she said, oh, it doesn't sound like it'll be very creative for the workshop leaders, for the small groups. But I said, no, it'll be very creative, because what they're going to do is listen. The participants in the small group, they will retell some of the 4 stories that they've already told, and maybe some other stories will come to mind. And so they'll have a chance to tell stories, maybe some of the same stories that they already told to their partner, they'll tell now in the group, and they'll get feedback. And the facilitator of that group will, conduct that group and help give feedback for half an hour. So that is a very creative thing to do. Banu, please take over and say something about this workshop and working with the leaders of the small groups.
I have some confusion here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I do not read well, as some of you know.
Mhm.
Just fine. So what is happening here? We are having just to sort of clarify what is going on.
Mhm.
We are having 5 different workshops,
Mm.
and this is the discussion on introduction to storytelling workshop.
Mm.
You, Eric, and Banu have put together. Is that right?
Yes.
Broadly. And there are other people in the group here amongst the 14 of us who also are contributing to this particular workshop. Is that right?
Yes, you are right.
And
Yes.
would you like to hear from us how it sounds to us as feedback? What would you like? You just want to tell it to us and share, or?
No, we want feedback, and nothing is written in stone yet. There can be modifications.
Yes.
In some of the workshops, the various different people are going to give presentations in LS Hall. But so far, our thinking with this workshop is that it's just going to be Banu and me coming in to lead one little part. But Banu, you can decide if you want to have other people give presentations in the first half of it in LS Hall. That's fine.
Okay.
So-
Actually, a couple of them are interested to lead a part of this workshop. So we are just yet to finalize on who is about to take up which part. And of course, each and every trainer would be getting an opportunity to lead a small group workshop, small group activity. That, of course, yes, everyone are going to get. But this part, as far as the main workshop is concerned, only a couple of them will be getting opportunity.
See, our thinking so far with this workshop is that Banu, with a little assistance from me, would lead the first 90 minutes in LS Hall. This
Yes.
can change, but this is the thinking at the moment.
As of
And
now,
then-
yes, you're right.
And then 9 people would lead 9 small groups outside the room. One small group could stay in the room, and but 9 other people would lead groups outside the room, and they would not really lead activities. They would just facilitate the group and give feedback and facilitate other people giving feedback. You know, the feedback has to be given in a certain way, and sometimes you have to teach people how to give feedback.
Very
You have to be sure to be supportive. You have to be sure to try to understand, what does the storyteller want to do? How does she feel about what she's done? What are her goals, and is she accomplishing her goals? So you know, you don't want a member of a group to hurt the feelings of a storyteller or to be insensitive in any other way. So the facilitator of a group is responsible for making sure the coaching process goes well on intellectual and emotional levels in the small group. And you know, there'll be a lot of suggestions that will be presented in the first 90 minutes. And those suggestions will be reviewed in the small groups and then hopefully implemented. So Samata, does that begin to answer your question?
It's a lot clearer now what you guys are doing. Wonderful. Sounds great. Sounds well thought out. How would you like, so we are hearing your presentation on what you're doing that day right now. We are hearing and seeing it. What is it, how can we help? What would you like us to share how hear what your presentation, or would you just like us to listen? What would you like from us?
I think basically listen, but a little comment and you know, question is good. But let's get through these 5 outlines. We've gotten through 1. We have 4 more to go. So you know, we can have discussion along the way, or we can leave it after we go through the outlines. We can do a combination of the 2. Okay, so now, Banu, did you want to say anything else about the introductory workshop?
Yes, Samantha, to answer your question, Thank you for listening about the outline. And if you have any comments, you can probably write to us, or maybe at the end of this meeting, if time permits, you could share with us so that everyone can know what is your thoughts. And of course, when you, as far as your physical presence is concerned, on the day of the workshop, we are looking for trainers to lead the small groups, as Eric said. So we are looking for trainers to facilitate the smaller groups, to give professional feedback to the students and the adults as well for both the days. So if you are interested in that, you're most welcome, and do write to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send the email ID of each coordinator to the group as soon as the meeting's over, so everyone can communicate directly with the coordinator. Okay, Banush, can we go on to the next workshop?
Yes, please.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eric.
Great, thank you. The next one is going to be coordinated by Debjani, who is not here, so I will have to stand in for her. This will be on the afternoon of Thursday. Thursday is the day for college students, and it's free on this day. They just have to give a 50 rupee registration fee. And so this second one is storytelling for personal and professional success, with a focus on preparing for job interviews and giving project reports. So now I'm going to go on to screen share again, and for those of you who can follow it on the screen, I'm putting it up here. The first thing is I have to make it bigger, and it's now 11, I'll make it 18. Can most people see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, in general, during a workshop like this, we can have the participants do different things. One, of course, they have to listen to us lecture. That's the least fun. But then we can also ask them to write. Each one will have a pad and a pen. We can ask them to draw. Those are two internal activities, individual, internal. Then we can ask them to speak with a partner next to them. And by the way, in each workshop, it's going to take about 5 minutes near the beginning for the host, who's going to be the coordinator probably, to tell everyone, okay, in this workshop, a number of times you're going to be invited to talk to a partner next to you. So now choose your partner, and at that moment, some people will stand up and try to move around because they will realize they don't want to be partners with the person next to them. And then some people will be in a group of 3. And they'll say, oh, we need to be in a group of 3. So we'll let all that go on. We can have groups of 3. It's okay if they really want to. And then in each group, they have to decide upon, in each case, who's going to speak first and who's going to speak second. You really have to pin people down on this. And so if you say, okay, who's going to be the first speaker? Half the people will raise their partner's hand. Sort of a joke. Okay, so anyway, they'll work that out. So so then once that's set, we can go back 2 or 3 more times during that workshop, and it won't take any time to get them working in pairs. So we can have them speak with a partner, and then finally, as I say, the last half an hour basically of each workshop, we'll take them in small groups. Most groups will go outside the room. Debjani has a whole set of activities. She hasn't even told me all the details yet, but designed to assist people to overcome being shy and to speak to groups of people. So she's going to lead people in those activities. Now, relating to job interviews, and by the way, in this case also, for the first 90 minutes, we don't have any plan yet for other people who might assist Debjani in the big room. She might want other people to lead a segment for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So if you see something here that really is interesting to you, working with college students, helping inspire them, let me know, and I'll get you in touch with Debjani, and maybe she'll invite you to lead a segment in the big room. Okay, so one set of activities here is how and when did you realize you have certain unique interests, talents, and skills? And how are you developing these through education and work? And how do you hope to develop them? Then tell the story of the industry and the organization that you plan to go into. Tell the stories about some of the great innovations and innovators in your field. So these are case studies. And I think young people in college are interested in the great innovations in the fields they're going into. I think that it'll work. Regarding sales pitches, what we talked about is that maybe we would just name like 10 different products and invite individuals or people in the small groups to develop a sales routine in the form of a story or related to a story, which would tell both about the technical aspect of the product and the emotional aspect. Steve Jobs especially talked about, he said Apple Computers, the company, is not a hardware or software company. It's a company that facilitates creativity, that helps people be creative and expressive. So he was always pushing his people to talk about and think about not just the physical aspect of it, but how is this going to change people's lives? How is this going to help them actualize themselves? So when you do that kind of talk and sales and marketing talk, two options are you can appeal to people's fears, which is follow my advice or you'll have a disaster, your life will be ruined, or you can appeal on the positive side, follow my advice and your dreams will come true. Regarding dreams, what are your dreams for the future? I'm not sure if this will fit in here, but it might. And also we discussed about having storytelling about failures. When people fail, why do they fail? When I have failed, why did I fail? When characters in a movie failed, that I love a movie, when they failed, why did they fail? We're not sure if college students will be relaxed enough to talk about failure, but maybe. So anyway, these are the notes that we have so far. And I wish Debjani was here to take it forward, but the plan is that in small groups, they would just, talk more about this, tell more stories about this and related subjects. Does anyone have any feedback or any suggested additions for this one? Samatha, this is now we want you to give feedback.
I have a suggestion.
Go ahead, Barry.
Can anyone hear me? I just know that J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, gave a wonderful keynote at a commencement about failure. And so fitting into that last topic, there might be just a reference to that, or the leaders might want to look at that.
You think that the recording of her speech is on YouTube?
I don't know about the recording. I'm sure that you could find the text of it. But there might be recordings.
She's such an inspirational story because, I think she was poor when she was growing up. Her family was getting government assistance, and she lived in her car for years before she struck it rich. Good. Yes.
I don't have any feedback. I'm attending to what you are presenting.
Okay,
I will wait for my own thing.
Yes.
Coaching.
Yeah, well, we have to think about what do college students, what should college students hear? What should they think about? They should think about perseverance, determination, and of course, in a workshop, we don't want to just lecture them. We want them to have an internal experience. So one good way, I think, really is to have them think about and tell about their heroes and heroines in their chosen fields so that they can identify and model themselves after their heroes and heroines. I'm focusing here, I think, on real life stories for college students. There may be a place for fantasy with them, but I think the thing to do is to start with real life stories. Did somebody want to add something?
Eric, I have a small suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
It's Lavanya here. Can I talk?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. As you were saying, it's important for us to discuss the role models or the heroes and the heroines they have in mind. But more importantly, they need to write their own story, maybe a small one. How do they look at themselves? What is it that they have, the strengths and the weaknesses, or what they are made of?
Mm-hmm.
What is their identity? Maybe we should give them some time and a couple of exercises to look within themselves, and maybe incidents from their own lives,
Mm-hmm.
personal lives, which at difficult moments or challenges, let them pull out such instances and see their behavior and how they felt about it.
Wonderful.
Or even what their goal is, what is it that they want in life, things like that. Maybe we can, couple of questions, maybe a short profile of their own personality. It's very important for them before attending interviews or group discussions for placement to know about themselves.
Wonderful. So we have the choice whether we ask them to write it or tell it to a partner.
Yes.
But I'm so glad that we're recording this conversation because you just put that very beautifully, and we can go over that and transcribe it and really meditate on that.
And here we may.
Let me just finish my thought. We already have listed in there asking them to think about how they discovered their special interests, talents, and skills. But the additional things you raised are also very interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to maybe have a couple of sentences which would guide them, because not everybody might have the right kind of this thing at that moment. So maybe a couple of sentences which would lead them to look at the important points would always help them to come up, because the time is very short. Within that time, they need to work and look at themselves. So maybe a couple of guidelines or exercises with a starting sentence and blanks or something like that where they can put it down.
Please, if you have any, suggestions for, please you write, this is called a prompt.
Yep.
Something that we can
a prompt
that will prompt them to write. Please send any of that either to I don't know if you're in that group, but send it to me, send it to Debjani.
Okay.
And, I have a feeling that she would like additional people to help lead the group in the first 90 minutes. So maybe she'll, maybe you could help speak. You could speak to the students directly, perhaps. That'll be on the afternoon of Thursday, the 7th.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's.
Okay. Go ahead, Beth.
Just it's really brilliant what Lavanya had said, and I would agree, because they've got to pull on their own internal resources and know what they are really quick. Maybe something that they would be able to examine their motivations, their expectations of what they thought would happen, because maybe it's just being realistic or what their expectations were, managing expectations, and to maybe reframe the failure as feedback. Maybe like you said, taking a heroine, or within themselves drawing on another time when they perceived it as failure, but then, what did I learn? How did I course correct? But those prompts would be great. I went into this thinking X, but something else seemed to occur, which was this, and I learned blank from this. you know, something like that to fill in the blanks, or they could make it into a poem or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, college students, they're at the near the beginning of their lives. A major decision and turning point that they've been through is choosing a college and choosing a major. They may not end up going into that field, but they have gone through a big process, either going along with what their parents suggested or fighting their parents on it. So, one possible prompt is to ask them to think, write, talk about the process of their career decisions so far. You know, we have to be delicate about asking people to really explore and share really personal, emotional things in a big workshop like this. If they're just talking to their partner, I guess they can control it. But you know, it's always cooler in the sense of a less emotional heat to invite people to think about their professional lives rather than their personal lives. But we can do both. Anyone else want to say anything about working with college students? Ramya, you're on mute. And Ramya has learned how to raise her hand. We should all learn how to do that. How did you do that, Ramya?
It's just next to my name on the list, in the list of participants.
We don't know how to do it. I think there's a button you can just press on the keyboard to do it.
Yeah, there's a button there.
Which one is it?
You click the participants button, Eric.
It says raise hand. There's a button called raise hand.
I don't see it. Does anyone else see it?
Eric, at the bottom, you have invite participants, share, chat, and record, right?
Yep.
Those buttons. There you have something called participants. There it shows number 14.
Yep.
Just click on that participants button, and you'll see the list of participants who are now connected.
Oh yeah, and I see Ramya and Barry have their hands raised. Well,
Yeah.
okay, let's, you know, for those of us who are low tech like me, if you want to speak, just raise your real hand. But okay, Ramya, go ahead.
Why would we need to use a button when we can say this? Yeah.
Well, no, if you with the button you can do it silently.
Yeah,
But this is also silent.
That's true. That's true. Go ahead, Ramya.
I just love what Lavanya and Beth had to say, and I just wanted to add something. I was part of an activity, something like this, when I was in college.
Excuse me, Ramya. We couldn't hear you. Could you please be a bit louder?
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just love what Lavanya and Beth had to say just now, and I want to add something. I was part of an activity similar to this when I was in college, and we were told to write a quick letter to our future self, where we spoke about our dreams and motivations. And if we feel at that point, if you're motivated enough, you could share it with a partner or a group of people, and it really had a deep impact on me. And I still have the letter, so I just thought I'll share it with the group. Yeah,
That was wonderful.
That's a wonderful activity.
Yes.
And that's used a good deal in psychodrama. People talking to older and younger versions of themselves. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we go on to the next workshop?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Barry. Go ahead, Barry.
My thought was one that I think picks up on what Ramya said, and it might be a simple activity that could be fun.
Wait a minute, somebody has children talking. Who has the children talking? Okay, go ahead.
An activity that could be fun.
Just a second, Barry, just a second. We have one rectangle that says Vignesh's phone, but we don't have a picture from Vignesh. But I just muted Vignesh because there was children talking.
Hello?
Yes, Vignesh.
Yeah, hi, Eric. I think the camera wouldn't open. I'm not too sure if I'm
okay.
visible enough.
You're not visible, but you are audible. But the children with you are also audible. So keep yourself
I'll try to
on.
be as brief as possible and then put myself on mute.
Oh, you want to say something now?
Yeah. So I just
Okay.
joined a bit late, but I thought I'll just share some perspectives.
Go ahead.
So I've been checking a few mails which were shared. I think I am also of the same view that we could use both the success, failures, and give some perspectives to the college students without being too preachy, but giving a perspective from people who got immense experience in the corporate space. I mean, that's something which I thought I'll just share my bit with. Probably like people like me, or probably people more people who have experience in the corporate space could share their own personal experience on what to expect when they join a company, what not to, and give a complete different dimension to the students.
Possible, but again, we don't want to talk too much. We want the focus to be on the students talking with each other. But it's a good thought. Let's follow it up. Okay, Barry, I apologize you got interrupted. Please,
no worries.
Please continue. Go ahead.
An activity that I think could be fun, and it's similar to what Ramya said, is a forward visioning, thinking of yourself in 20 or 30 years at the height of your career, and possibly writing a news story that you could almost call like a Steve Jobs story, but something that, would say, well, Barry Mann, who is now the executive director of the World Process Drama Institute, and telling your backstory that leads you to that. So visioning forward.
Mm-hmm. And raising the
thinking
idea.
of that as an activity that people make notes for themselves and then tell that story to each other. Whether it's in a news format that you're telling a story about yourself as a news reporter or some other format. But thinking of yourself at the height of your career trajectory in another 30 or 40 years.
And thinking of it as a newspaper article really brings it into the public sphere.
Sure.
Interesting. Okay. Again, it's so nice that we're recording this because we can just go back and listen to it. Or I can. Samata, go ahead.
So I was at the college Stella Maris, which had a lot of women. So this college that we are doing it in has both female and male students. I'm just wanting to know.
We'll be at Loyola College, which used to be all men. Now I think they have women, but we're going to send invitations to every college in Chennai, especially to the English departments. So if you will have an invitation letter very soon, please you send it to any college student or any college professor that you can think of, and they will be invited.
All right. So I just had a point. If it was okay, so it might be a mixed audience. I had a point that in Stella they said that most like 70% of the women who finished their undergrad did not pursue a career. They got married and settled in. So in which case, if it was a female college, I would have liked some sort of exploration of the personal life, like not just say where is success and go there, but sort of bring in like family life into it. But Loyola may be a male audience, in which case I don't know what to add, but I just wanted to bring this to you all.
Samata, you of all people should know. Of course, being a homemaker is also a career.
I mean, I would love. Yes, that's true. It's a valid point. But when we say success and stories, I wonder if as presenters we think of it as career, like where do you head and what do you do.
When we say professional, yes, it does imply outside the home. Yes.
Right.
We'll address that point. Good. Okay, let Delphina go ahead.
Okay, quick observation, adding on to the comments from Beth and Lavanya. I feel that we are talking about using failures, and very often when I reflect on my corporate experience also, we are required to in the interview present a success story out of what looked like a failure or how we overcome the challenge.
Yeah.
So I was thinking if it makes sense to design an activity where we talk about failure and have the person re-narrate the same experience in a different point of view to make it look like a success.
Okay. Debjani, if you're watching this recording, take note. Good. Okay, let's go on. We have 3 more workshops to discuss. The next one is using storytelling to teach English language. that will be led by Srividya, who is not here. Let me get it on the screen. Share. Okay, as in most cases, the first hour and a half approximately will be in the big room, and then people will go off in small groups to review and practice what they've been exposed to, and then the last 20 minutes we'll come back and discuss the whole thing in the big group. So in this case, Srividya will begin with some talking and leading activities. We won't look at the details now, but Banu, she wants you to especially give a presentation about finger play. Okay?
Sure, Eric.
Okay. And there's a gentleman named Mr. Guna who has been on the scene here in Chennai lately. He lived many years in Dubai, where he ran a youth training organization. And he has sent emails in about using anecdotes that involve words, syllables. So he might give a presentation. Rohini, she's coming from, where is she coming from? North India someplace. She has a lot of experience about this. And I have these activities about puns and rhymes and contractions. Seema is coming. Pooja works with a picture dictionary. Lavanya Prasad, we're going to ask her to do something. So in this one, there are going to be many presenters during the first part in the big hall. These are some of the stories that might be used. And then there's a bunch of notes. Okay, comments? Anybody? Don't save, yeah. Stop share. Yeah. If you, have some additional, as I say, as soon as I get clearance from each of the coordinators, I'll send the outlines out to us that we've been looking at. So you'll see that. But either then or now or sometime, if you have any additional suggestions, please send them in, whether or not you're in that particular group. Anybody? Feedback, questions, comments?
Guna's father passed away 4 days ago.
Who?
4 or 5 days ago. Guna's father.
Oh.
So he might not.
Okay.
Okay, so fortunately, what we're doing is set up so that we're very flexible. If we have an activity from him, somebody else can conduct that activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's just leave that at that for the moment. Okay, anyone else want to say anything?
Eric, what is a group activity here in this English workshop?
The group activity will just be going into a small group and practicing. They will have been exposed to many, many different activities.
Okay.
So in the small group, they'll review and practice them. That's what we're thinking so far. We could give them some little project, some special project to work on. See, the idea is that after they're in the small groups, they should come back to the big room, and each group could make a presentation to the group in the big room. So, we might ask each group, what was especially interesting to you? How did you modify the activity? Like that.
Fine.
Also, Eric, if I may add. Yeah?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Since this is an English workshop, I would like to look at a literary format, genre where biographies or autobiographies, we can ask the students to list out the ones that they have been impacted by or some popular ones if they can list out, because it is about a life story. It's again another person's story. Maybe if they can write or discuss something to do with the literature part,
Well,
where
yeah, go ahead.
as a small activity, if we can, to get it started, it might be a very interesting starting point to get the students think, talk, and get involved in it. Not just the structure and the grammar, but then it is the ideas and it is the perspectives that need to be simulated for them to do whichever activity they want. Or I think especially we are looking at the English language, so we need to look at a literary genre as well to make it more interesting and impactful. That's
okay, we can have some of that, but we could also have some of that in the next workshop, which
what would be the next one?
The next one is about teaching different subjects, including literature.
Yeah. But here I thought, because it is about English and it's about a personal story and people characters, we will have other subjects in that, when you're talking about different subjects. This is just an idea. We can either use
this is the discussion. This is a discussion about whole language, where there's one school that says you cannot just teach grammar alone. You have to do it in the context of literature.
Yes, that is precisely. The context would be biographies or autobiographies.
Okay, we'll talk with Srividya about it. But again, I think some of this will also fit with the next workshop, which luckily Ambuja is here and she can help talk about it. And I think, Vasugi, are you here? I see your window. It has your name on it, but we don't see you. Anyway, you can watch the video. Okay, shall we go to we have 2 more workshops to go. Shall we go to the next one? Yes. Good. The next one is the teaching any subject with storytelling. And this has been the most popular one. The email group has been the most popular. There has been many suggestions, wonderful suggestions for it. And now I'm going to, please go on mute, everyone, because we're getting some like wind sound. Here, I'm even going to do it. Yep, that was you. Okay, let's see. Yeah, when it's like this, I have the power to mute everyone. Yeah, and you can unmute yourselves, but I've muted everyone. Good. Okay, now I'm going to go to screen share again and bring up the window for teaching any subject. And let me make it size 18. Okay. So we thought we would start this one perhaps with tell your partner about an educational experience you've had. Now actually it's too quiet. So really, if you want to add something, please do. Just unmute yourselves and jump in and say something, okay? Don't be shy. Don't wait until this whole thing is over. I like being interrupted. Okay, so this might be the one of the activities. And then a key activity is that Vasugi is going to tell a story that's an example of using a story to teach a subject. And I think this morning she said she might tell the story about the mouse who goes on a sea voyage, and use that story to teach about geography, different cultures and different places. A lot of this is geared towards teaching very young children, but as much as possible, I hope it can also be geared to teaching older people, through college and above. And by the way, now I can only see 4 people's windows, so raising your hand electronically or physically won't do any good. If you want to say something, please just unmute yourselves and say it. Okay, so Vasugi is going to give an example of a story that can be used to Ray's academic subject. And the whole idea here is that, you know, educators often say, we don't want to teach people what to think, we want to teach them how to think. But in practice, most of the time, people are taught what to think. To teach them how to think is to teach them ways of approaching a subject and coming up with questions, looking at it from different angles. And hopefully a story will help do that. It will help raise issues that then people can follow up on intellectually and other ways. You know, I always feel that where our emotions go, our intellect follows. So if we can get emotional involvement through personification, that's one of the great tools of story composition. Pretending mice and pots and pans or a drop of water has human consciousness and human speech, and it goes on adventures. That kind of personification adds emotion to a subject. Okay, Barry, I am hoping you here. I want to see you, so I'm going to stop the share. Barry, we are really hoping you will give your presentation about the cathode ray tube.
Yeah, I'm planning on that. I video recorded my telling of the story the other day with a group of third graders, and I might do another recording of it on Tuesday with another group. And then my plan is to patch that together with some narration. So basically, I'll create a video where I talk about telling the story and intersperse excerpts from the telling with the students so that people can see the strategies I'm using in action. And then I think our plan, Eric, was that if I make a video that's about 8 to 10 minutes long that gives a kind of an outline of the story, and then I can be available via Zoom for about 5 minutes of discussion if people have questions for me.
Well, that's one way. I'm also kind of hoping you will actually, at least part of the time, pretend that we in Chennai are your students and you teach us a lesson.
I could do that. The story, the involvement that is involved with, you know, with students involves them coming up and putting on costumes and being present in that way. So it might be a little harder, but we can try that.
Hopefully you would be able to see us in our seats, and you could ask us to do things with our hands and faces. You could ask us to turn to a partner and do something. So keep that in mind, but we also do have to be conservative and careful and say that in case somehow the video connection does not work for any reason, that we do have a video recording that we can show.
Okay. And you and I can talk more about this.
Yes, and Ambuja and Vasugi, because they are the coordinators of this segment. I think even if you made a recording as part of this, of yourself talking into the camera as if your students were on the other end, of course you wouldn't have that interactivity, but there could be a simulation of it at least. And then we wouldn't have to use that recording if our connection worked. Today we're having a very nice connection, right? We have like 16 people, and you know, I'm not religious, but I want to say God bless Zoom. Whatever they're doing, it is you know, I've been working with video conferencing for 25 years, and this is a extreme jump from Skype and from Google Hangout. The audio and video is just so high quality. So you know, we'll have the Wi-Fi at Loyola College, and hopefully that will be just as good. But everyone knows for business presentations, you do not depend on the internet. You have a backup on your hard drive. Okay, so so that presentation, we're thinking about 15 minutes, something like that. Now let me go back to screen share. And so this will be radical. You see, this whole process is radical in a number of ways. The way we're planning it together, and the way that we're even planning for people to lead parts of the workshop by video conference. It's a jump. Okay, I'm going back to screen share. Okay, so Barry is going to give, you're going to give your presentation. Then Seema is going to give a presentation. We haven't discussed it with her, but we hope she's going to do it. In both cases, we want you to simulate a classroom environment with you as the teacher and us as the students. Okay, and then the small group process. In the small group process, each group will choose a concept and come up and develop a story that teaches that concept, or that raises the issues relating to that concept. Okay, and then when we come back, each group will either will have an individual storyteller, or they'll use tandem storytelling with a narrator and actors to present it to the group. Okay, any comments, questions about this workshop? Go ahead, Samata, unmute yourself.
I've been discussing this sort of storytelling in classroom teaching, and with a few other people who are interested in this, and we've only come up with historical storytelling that seems to work well using this way. But I mean, you're implying that you are teaching science and math using storytelling, or what is the subjects that you're talking about here?
Well, we'll do a few. With history and literature, a key principle that I use is that I invite the students to identify with the characters and to think, if I was in that position, what would I do? So either in the middle of the story or at the end of the story, you get the students to try to project themselves in. And one way to do that is to invite students to tell the story of a character in first person. To say like, yes, I am Mahatma Gandhi. Let me tell you about what happened one day. So people emotionally connect, both the teller and the listeners get very emotionally involved when they take a third person story. He did this, he did that, far away and long ago, and suddenly turn it into, I am playing Mahatma Gandhi. I did this and I did that. So we'll do a little demo of that with history and literature type subjects. What do you say? Does that begin to answer your comment, question?
I can see that it works well with history and literature. I was wondering if other subjects like math and science also get a storyteller's perspective, or we don't touch that, or
well, see, what Barry's doing is a case study of how the cathode ray tube was invented. And the case study method, which is used in business, law, medicine, that's basically storytelling or story writing, reading and writing. And you look at the struggle of the inventor along the way. So as I say, with math, the simplest and oldest way of teaching math with story is just these examples of, we have 4 apples and 2 children. If each of them are going to get the same amount of apples, how many apples would each child get? Each child would get 2 apples, right? That is a story. It's an illustration. Go ahead, Ramya. You got to unmute yourself.
Hi, Samata. Just to add something to that discussion, I've actually used stories to teach math, science, and English. And the retention is much higher. Like, I've done it for a lot of concepts. Like, I've used Gingerbread Man to teach fractions, and a story of 2 frogs, Frog and Toad, to teach hibernation, etc. So it's completely, it's amazing to teach maths and science concepts also through stories. Yeah.
Okay, this is the big subject because the biggest, probably the most popular application of storytelling, aside from just storytelling, is storytelling for education. So there's been a lot of work, there's been a lot of writing, a lot of documentation. So it's no surprise that this has been the most popular subject in the email groups. Lavan, you have to take yourself off mute. Let's see if I can do it. Okay, Lavan, you go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So recently I had conducted teacher training workshop using cinema and stories in classroom to teach science. Teaching science through moving images. So we take stories and maybe from movies, from documentaries, from popular cinema, from life history, documentaries, YouTube. You take clippings and discuss the story and discuss the concept. For instance, even in popular cinema like Swadesh, where Shah Rukh Khan, who comes from US to a village, and they have this, they want to produce electricity through water. So there are scenes in that story, in that movie. Similarly, we can take stories which are either shown as movies or as storybooks and discuss. And the life history of the scientists, and also very dramatic moments in the scientists while they make some inventions and discoveries. You know, those dramatic moments, we can talk about it in the form of a story.
Great. So please talk about this with...
About science, it works very well.
Please talk about this with Vasuki and Ambuja, and the question will be, how much will be mentioned to the audience, and how much will the audience be invited to enact it?
Okay.
The heart of a workshop is getting people to do activities so they realize the value of something from within, from their own experience. But also in a workshop, naturally, we do a little bit of lecturing, explaining. So one way or the other, let's have some consideration of what you just said. Okay, anyone else want to add anything? Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, I noticed in the workshop, Eric, that you have that the groups would create a story to accompany in one of the concepts. But I'm also interested in using folklore, and I've been exploring the notion that folklore in many ways was the original scientific method, that people long ago witnessed their environments, they gathered evidence from their observations, and they created narratives to explain what they saw. So even using stories like why mosquitoes buzz in people's ears or why the opossum's tail is bare can be the basis, or stories about volcanoes or about rainbows or about thunder can be a wonderful basis for looking at scientific process, for looking at how people's explained those things and then comparing and contrasting with how we now explain things given the advanced technologies that we have to give us further explanation. And so I'd love to see if there's a way to include in the workshop the use of folklore and pourquoi stories. And I didn't see that, and maybe it is.
Certainly, and I'm trained in folklore. I did a PhD in folklore at University of Pennsylvania from a department that is now closed, by the way. So yes, let's try to figure out how to do it. You can even mention it during your 15 minutes. But even beyond that, let's talk about how we can do that. Okay, anyone else? Okay, good. Let's go on to the last one, which is the one that I am reading. Let's see. Close this. Don't save. Okay, I'm going on to screen share. Oh, Ramya, did you want to say something? Or your hand was raised from before? Well, I don't know. Ramya, can you hear me?
I can. I think I'm not, I should do something to the hand. No, I didn't have any.
Yeah, once you raise it, can you take it down? That's the question.
I'm sure there is, but I think I didn't do it. Sorry.
Okay. Now, this 7-step of storytelling therapy, and I'm saying therapy, even though this method can also be used for coaching, personality development. In other words, it can be used even in contexts where the facilitator is not qualified as a psychological counselor. It can also be used by coaches. This 7-step method is really based on Carl Jung's method, which had 3 steps. The first step was analyzing the client and the therapist together, think about the client's life story, look for turning points, look for archetypes. Number 2, together they think about stories that are similar to aspects of the client's life story. And the value of this is that, one value is that it helps the client realize that he or she is not alone, that many people, many characters, yeah. Wait a minute, let me get on mute. Hold on a second. Stop share. Mute. Okay, I've got everyone muted. What was I saying? Oh, the value of, see, even in folk tales and even in proverbs, if situations are addressed, it makes a person realize that this kind of thing has happened before, and my culture, my community, my society has ways of dealing with it, has suggestions of how to deal with it. So this step involves collecting both from folklore and from movies and from history, from any place, stories that are similar to one's own experience. So I think of it as getting a basket and filling the basket with 5, 6, 7 or more related stories. That is Jung's step number 2. And Jung's step number 3 is, he calls it creative imagination, actually stepping into the stories, and both the personal stories and the external stories, and speaking to the characters and speaking as the characters. So really bringing the characters to life and interacting with them. So I have expanded that into 7 steps. I've added a first step, which is, I guess it's taken for granted that first the client has to tell her life story. And in a workshop like this, I invite people to tell a 10-minute version of the life story. So they'll do that to a partner, someone sitting next to them. Number 2, that's Jung's number 2. I identify outstanding elements in the story, including one's joys and frustrations. And it's up to people how personal they want to get. And again, they're not sharing this with the whole group. They're just sharing it with one partner. Number 3, I'm calling it echoing stories. This is the part where you gather similar stories. Jung actually calls this amplification. At least that's the English translation of the word that we have, where you're amplifying your own experience to put it on the level with mythology and legends. I prefer just association or echoing. And then this is Jung's next step, talking to and as the characters. And I believe my wife, Magdalene J. Ratnam, has agreed to lead a session of facilitating people to do role-playing, speaking to younger versions of themselves, older versions of themselves, Cinderella, younger versions of Cinderella, and so forth. She is a leader in the field of psychodrama in India, and psychodrama is a very elaborate form of working with role-playing. So she will give us a sense of this, and I predict if she really does do it, it will be the highlight of the whole session. Okay, then I've added these additional steps. Go ahead and modify any of the stories that you've been thinking about. Add a character, change the ending, just to satisfy your whims. Let your imagination play, wander, and roam. Along the way, see what metaphors come up in your mind for your own experience, and then use those metaphors to create a story for yourself, which might be healing, guiding, inspirational, or as Jung stresses, integrational. His word is individuation, that the point of therapy is to bring up the different parts of ourselves, bring it up to consciousness, and get everybody on the same page. And help them work out their differences and overcome, developmental conflicts or whatever. But to integrate things and the idea is that helps people become more mature. So that is I teach a 13-week course in this, and it really should be part of a master's degree. So to present this in 2.5 hours is kind of ridiculous, but at least it'll give people a taste of it. And when they go into small groups, each of the 9 leaders will facilitate people approaching it wherever they want to approach it, and sharing with it a little bit. Now, Beth, if you're awake during the time when this workshop is occurring, I'd be very, happy if you would be a part of it. You can even make a video recording if if you can't be awake, or of course, I'd like to read your ideas. But I feel you have special experience in this, which I would be very happy if you would participate in this workshop one way or the other, and anyone else. Ambuja, you and Vasugi have agreed to be 2 of the leaders of the small groups, right? This morning you agreed that. Anyone, please give some feedback about this.
So I would thank you. I would love to be a part of it. We can talk later about what that would look like. One small thing experience in this, and I don't know if you would want to go there, it's just experience with a pilot group that will be rolled out to a huge congregation at a local church, because the church has felt it's been very ill-equipped in handling people and their stories, and just haven't really been great listeners. So it's, few thousand people. And a lot of this had to do with mental health. Mm-hmm. And it was in the process of telling their story before they recrafted it, was to learn where are some unhealthy beliefs, where am I agreeing with vows or lies or people's projections onto me. And some of this came up, and it was really good to deal with, so that they had a better foundation in building their story going forward, to know that they were listening to their own voice and not somebody else's. So that was kind of a healing process. I don't know if there's time or space for that, but it was really revealing to say, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was telling my story based on a lie or based on what someone else thought of me.
Of course. I just read a book called Narrative Coaching. There's actually a field called narrative coaching, and a person who claims he founded this field, and he's the main developer of it. And this is a big theme of his, that we tend to be, we take on and we carry belief systems that affect our identity, and the time may come when we may, want to change the belief systems we're carrying, the worldviews, the philosophies. I came up the other day with the formulation that each one of us is a battleground in which different ideologies are fighting. They're fighting for us. So we're a battleground, and we're also the object of the battle, where each one of us is the prize. Each ideology and the social group behind that ideology is trying to win us over to be on their side. So the process of finding your own identity, of course, is deciding, not being manipulated by one ideology or another, but deciding which ideologies, one wants to embrace. So yes, this type of thinking certainly is good for this workshop. We have to think about what prompts to use to get people to think about it, whether we should ask them to write, whether we should ask them to draw, whether we should ask them to talk to the person next to them, but we'll do it. And, be aware, this is going to be a room full of 50 or 100 total strangers to each other. They may not all be strangers, but we have to take it for granted. So we have to, keep that in mind, and not, and protect people from some people might, say too much and then regret it later. So we have to go slow with it. Go ahead, Samata.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous to share my feedback now. Given my work, given I've been running energy clinic and working with health for a while, I think it may be a good idea that since healing is experiential and also coaching and understanding what it is we want to really transform, I suggest that it's 7 or 10, maybe too high a goal to shoot in that time. If you just pick 3 or 4, psychodrama, maybe Beth's work, or 2 or 3, people might have more space to experience, I think, because each of them seems to be a different topic in itself. Like healing using, the final point I saw, like healing using inspiring stories itself is, so that's my feedback, that you simplify it such that they experience really what is.
Yes, certainly in a 2.5-hour session, very few people will actually come up with a healing or integrational story for themselves. But I want to present this method. Certainly we will focus on certain parts of it. As I say, if Magdalene is there, we'll especially focus on the speaking to and as characters part. Or we can develop other prompts as I think Beth has a lot of experience with different prompts that can be used, and you also do. So we can focus on different things. But I want to give an overview of this method.
Right. So you're choosing to give them the whole background and many steps instead of giving them the experiential. You're making a choice clearly. You want them to know that these are the ways that they can go about it. Is that right?
We'll give them the intellectual exposure to the whole system, and then we'll give them an experiential experience of certain parts of it.
Okay, that's the strategy. All right. I hear you.
And they will be able to choose. See, when they go into small groups with a facilitator, they will be able to choose what parts of it they want to think about and talk about and share with the other members of the small group.
You might only want to put in the thing that it might be a little too much information, in which case they might not be able to go in personally into themselves. It's a choice you make, but I want you to put that into your thinking. All right.
By the way, disclosure about myself, I have a PhD in folklore, and I am near completing, I hope, a master's degree in psychology. I have to pass one more exam to complete the master's degree, but until I pass that, I am not qualified as any sort of a therapist or psychologist. And Beth and Barry to explain about this, in the USA, I think each state certifies a therapist, and it's a very strict process. You have to have a number of hours and be supervised and so forth. In India, it's not so regulated at the moment. In India, basically, if you earn a master's degree in psychology or social work, it's accepted that you can work as a psychological counselor. So I'm on the verge of being able to work like that. But I can't yet, and I have to act accordingly.
Eric, it looks like Lavanya wants to say something.
Go ahead, Lavanya. Wait, we have to take you off mute. Just a second. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, 2 quick points, Eric. What Samatha has made, it's a very valid point. Because when I do understand your eagerness to let people experience or enjoy or know what is available to them as an alternative. But at the same time, how much is the right thing to start off? And also, we need to first give them a 10-minute or a 15-minute window to introduce storytelling as a healing concept, as therapy. Because we need to reassure the participants that what exactly is going to happen there. It's not some psychological treatment or whatever that we are going to mete out to them. I feel it is very important to create an awareness in the participants first as to what the whole thing is and the idea is. Secondly, the next step would be how much of it can we do within the stipulated time without confusing or maybe pushing the students a little into a shell or whatever it is, because this is a new area and a sensitive area. So as Samatha pointed out, I feel we need to have a relook at this with an awareness talk for about 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning, and then choose one or two instead of giving just information, maybe something that they can experience and understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's my idea. So
yeah, well, this workshop is titled Coaching and Counseling. And so the point is that this 7-step method, it is not just for healing, it is not just for psychological counseling, it is also to facilitate personality development, fulfillment of self, self-actualization. Now these are, when we talk about development and actualization, this does not involve healing. This just involves a natural development, like a seed blooming into a flower or a seed blooming into a tree. So there's no stigma with that. You see, as we all are aware, there's still a large stigma, especially in India, about possibly being mentally ill, possibly needing to go to a counselor, and it's a very delicate subject, which we have to navigate with very carefully. So let me just finish. So one point is we're not just talking about healing and trauma. We're also talking about just facilitating development. Number two, what I want to say is that we are presenting here a method that some of them may end up using professionally. Some of them may end up being trainers or psychological counselors themselves. So we're just presenting a method for them to think about. And as has been said, we will invite them to experience certain parts of this method, and they themselves will choose what parts of the experience they want to, what part of the method they want to experience. Go ahead. Did you want
to? The tool that we are using here is rather sensitive, and also a bit of education and awareness is required, I feel. Otherwise, it might just go over their head or it might backfire. Just to make your point go to them in a more concrete and purposeful way, I would suggest that we handle it in a slightly different way. That's it. It is a very good idea, but the implementation can be maybe thought a little more.
Oh, and by the way, this is not for college students. This one is for adults.
Yes, even for adults.
So the people who have signed up for this workshop are coming in to be trained, really, in a method for facilitating, coaching and counseling. So I think they are. It'll be a mature group, a serious group, a largely professional group. But everything you said is fine, and we'll incorporate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Delphina.
I was just thinking that, like, if the target audience is practitioners of therapy, I think it makes total sense to have all the 7 steps. But I don't think we should set an expectation that people are going to go into in-depth personal healing in this particular session.
Of course not.
Then I think what you say makes sense to me, Eric.
Kanika, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No. I'm just sure. Just
exercising your hand. Okay. So now let's have a little closing words about all 5 workshops. Let's review. The first one was Introduction to Storytelling, then Storytelling for Personal and Professional Success, then Storytelling for Teaching English, Storytelling for teaching any subject, and Storytelling for coaching and counseling. Anybody, if you want to say anything about any of these, all of these? this is our closing few minutes. Anybody want to say anything? I guess everyone has already said what they want to say.
Yeah, said a lot.
Yeah, and we're going to follow up by email and all. I don't know if we'll have another meeting like this before the conference.
Eric, I guess Beth.
Let me just finish. We will have a festival video conference on Wednesday, February 6th, with Marion Kenny is going to be visiting from Scotland, and Ruth Stoddard will be visiting from California. They'll be here in Chennai with me, and we'll have a conversation about all the different applications of storytelling in a video conference. I hope some of you will join us for that. But go ahead. Beth, did you raise your hand, or who?
It was just a really quick resource for people that may want for some of the prompts. His name is Richard Gold. He's here in the States, and he does have templates and prompts, and he's free with them, and you can adjust them to your age group and the language, but they're just a beautiful free resource. Richard Gold, I want to make sure and if I need to send an email or a link, I will, but he works specifically with kids in trauma, but the prompts were very fruitful. I've used, but adapted them into something else. So it's out there for people who might want to check it out.
Please, Beth, send us any prompts that come to your mind. Go ahead, Barry.
Do you know the specific timing on the video conference on February 6th?
India time is 10.5 hours later than USA East Coast time.
So what time would that be? I don't think you said the time for the conference.
Well, yes, and I hope that daylight saving time doesn't change between now and the festival. These workshops, the morning ones begin at 10 a.m., the afternoon ones begin at 1:30 p.m. So the one on healing begins at 1:30 in the afternoon. Is going to be dab smack in the middle of the night on the USA East Coast.
I wanted to know about, you mentioned the video conference on February 6th.
Oh, that will be the same time as tonight.
Okay,
as today.
8 p.m. Chennai.
I think so, maybe 1 hour different, but pretty much similar.
Great.
Kanika?
With Srividya regarding the English subject.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, we didn't hear the beginning of what you said. Say it again.
Actually, I want to coordinate with Srividya.
Great.
For storytelling is English.
Good. I'll send an email to you and Srividya.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And she will see this recording. She will know what to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Delphina?
I didn't have something specific to ask now, but I was thinking with the 5 workshops, do you think we should have a video conference in the subgroups with each workshop and their volunteers alone so that
we could. Maybe after a week or so?
Yeah, something like that. Thank you.
Okay. So now let me stop the recording, and we can still talk for a minute after the recording stops. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm stopping the recording.